Dear students, today we are going to discuss the poem The Mother by Gwendolyn Brooks. Usually, when you see a title like this, the image that immediately comes to your mind is of a protective mother who sacrifices everything, even herself, for raising the children. Say, for example, Maxim Gorky's mother. But on the contrary, here in this poem, we find a woman who aborted her fetus and living in its regret. So the question here is she who aborted her fetuses still a mother? Before we start with the poem, let's look at a brief introduction about the poet. Gwendolyn Brooks, born in 1917, was an African American poet. She started writing poetry from the age of 13 itself. Her later works dealt with social issues and she actively participated in the Black Arts movement of 1960s and 70s, which exhibit her political consciousness. According to critic George E. Kent, she had a strong commitment to racial identity and equality. A few of her important works are Brooks' first book of poetry, A Street in Brownsville. This was published in 1945, and in this book, she focuses on marginalized and ghettoized African American people. And our present poem for study, The Mother, was included in this collection. Now, her second book of poetry is Annie Ellen, published in 1950. And with this book, she became the first African American to win the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry. Now, In the Mecca is another important poem published in the year 1968. It talks about a mother searching for her lost child in an apartment in Chicago. In the 1950s, Brooks published her first and only novel, that is, Moth Martha. And in this novel, she challenges the general concepts of beauty. And Brooks died of cancer in the year 2000. Let's move into the poem. The Mother was first published in 1945, in which she talks about a mother's experience, her pain after having an abortion, and its further emotional impact in her life. Another important thing you have to keep in mind before reading this poem is that this poem is not supporting abortion, nor does it question the right to abortion. So you cannot categorize it as a pro or anti abortion rights poem. So now let's begin the poem. Abortions will not let you forget. You remember the children you got that you did not get. The damp small pulps with a little or with no hair. The singers and workers that never handled the air. You will never neglect or beat them or silence or buy with a sweet. So, the poem begins by addressing women like her who had to go through abortions. With that one sentence, abortions will not let you forget. She is connecting herself with others who had to face the similar situation. So, the speaker is telling us that abortion will not let us forget something. What? The next line gives the answer. The abortions will not let us forget the children you got that you did not get, which means the fetus inside you but not given birth to. So, abortions will not let us forget these fetuses even though they are not born. Another thing you need to understand here is the condition of African American women because the abortion rate was disproportionately high among them, even today. Since 1973, about 19 million black babies have been aborted. So, now back into the poem, she then goes on to describe them. It's a wonderful example of imagery. She imagines that had they been born, they would be like damp small pulps with a little or no hair. You know how a newborn baby looks like, right? They would have, and she further says, they would have become singers or workers when they grew up. But unfortunately, they were not given a chance to become so. Then she further says that you will never neglect or beat them or silence or buy with a sweet, which means you will never get a chance to play with them. Like sometimes ignoring them or beat them if they do something wrong or silence them at times or buy of them with a sweet. So she is imagining how her relationship would have been with these fetuses if they were born. So, next line, you will never wind up the sucking thumb or scuttle of ghosts that come. You will never leave them, controlling your luscious sigh, return for a snack of them with gobbling mother eye. You would have noticed sometimes infants have this habit of sucking their thumbs, which is a part of their growth, but as elders, we will try to stop it. But for this mother, a representative of many mothers like her, she will never get a chance to stop the child from sucking its thumb. Also, sometimes babies cry in their sleep when they dream of ghosts, and mothers will pretend like they are chasing away these ghosts so that babies can sleep soundly. Here, the speaker reminds us that mothers like her will not get a chance to scuttle off such ghosts. She further says that you will never get a chance to leave them with heartfelt sighs, only to return to them with devouring eyes as if they are some sweets. This suggests the mother's feeling of sadness when they leave their child and the eventual feeling of happiness when they return to them. These metaphors related to food are used maybe because the speaker is blaming herself for not giving herself a chance to taste these hearty moments of life. Now let's look at the second stanza. I have heard in the voices of the wind the voices of my dim killed children. I have contracted, I have eased my dim dears at the breast they could never suck. While in the first stanza, the mother is addressing other mothers like her, in the second stanza, she is pleading with her unborn children. She says, in the breezing wind, she hears the voices of her children who were actually killed by her. She calls them dim children, that is, children who could not see the light of the day, plucked away before their birth. So now they are just shadowy creatures. So she continues by saying that her body contracted and she imagines that she relieved or eased her unborn shadowy children by giving them her milk. But she is aware of the reality that they can't, in reality, drink her milk. Deep inside, she feels regret and sadness for these unborn children who couldn't suck their mother's breast. And in the next lines, she is defending her actions. I have said, sweets, if I sinned, if I seized your luck and your lives from your unfinished reach, if I stole your births and your names, your straight baby tears and your games, your stilted or lovely loves, your tumults, your marriages, aches, and your deaths, if I poisoned the beginnings of your breaths, believe that even in my deliberateness I was not deliberate. I would say these are the most heart-rending lines of this poem. She is addressing the unborn children as sweets. Sometimes we also call our little ones as sweetie or cutie pie. So, similarly, she tenderly calls them sweets and tells them that if I sinned against you by seizing away your luck or chance or opportunities and your valuable lives, if I stole your births, your names, names, it can be a reference to their identity as an individual. Then, if I stole your baby tears, your games, your infatuations, your sincere love affairs, your tumults or chaos in life, your marriages, your pains, and even your death, or if I have poisoned the beginnings of your breath, that means if I am responsible for killing you, then please believe me that although my choice of doing abortion was a deliberate one, I was not doing the above mentioned things deliberately or intentionally. So, here she is talking about each stage of their life as an infant, as an adolescent, as a youngster, and she discusses even their exit from this world. But her fetuses were not given a chance to be born and experience all these. So she pleads them to believe her that she should not be blamed for doing so. This means deep inside, her own conscience blames her. So she's trying to justify her actions uh, to herself. And she uses the word if 4 times. It reflects her complex emotions that puzzles her. Now, moving on. Though, why should I whine? Whine that the crime was other than mine, since anyhow you're dead. Or rather, or instead, you were never made. But that too, I am afraid, is faulty. So, like the familiar proverb, there's no point in crying over the spilled milk. She asks herself, why I should cry? Or what is the point of whining now, as you're dead now? But suddenly her conscience pricks her and she reframes her words and says, or rather, or instead, you were not made. Means, I didn't kill, for you were not born. But even in that sentence, she finds some fault and she is afraid of not knowing how to describe their fate, which was her choice. Here you can find the mother, for the first time, referring to abortion as a crime. Oh, what shall I say? How is the truth to be said? You were born, you had body, you died. It is just that you never giggled or planned or cried. So now, this first sentence, what shall I say? How is the truth to be said? It reminds us of the famous line, it is impossible to say just what I mean, told by T.S. Eliot in The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. So, what she means is that she's short of words. And sometimes we also feel this kind of situation where words cannot really express our pain. It is a truth or reality that the children she fancies about are no more. But she doesn't have the language to describe her experience and the experiences of her never born children. So she says, you were born, you had body, and you died. You entered this world. You exited or departed from this world like all the other human beings, but without a living experience of laugh, cry, games, love, marriages, tumults, aches. It's just that you never giggled, planned, or cried. Now, the last stanza. Believe me, I loved you all. Believe me, I knew you, though faintly, and I loved you all. So finally, she's stopping all her attempts to defend her actions, and in this last tercet, she tells that she loved them all. Although she never get to know them personally, yet she truly loved them all. Here, poets use anaphora, believe me. I think it is to emphasize her love to them, as she herself can't get rid of this guilt feeling in her. So, The Mother is a short poem of just 3 stanzas and written in free verse. Although it doesn't have a fixed rhyme scheme, we can find that the first lines of the poem are written in rhyming couplets. See, forget, get, hair, air, beat, sweet, thumb, come, sigh, I. Then names, games, deaths, breaths. Then wine, mine, dead, stead, made, frayed, said, died, died, cried. So there are rhyming couplets. So, in short, in this poem, the speaker is trying to say that a mother equally loves an unborn child as much as she loves the child who is born. But one important thing that we need to keep in our mind after reading this poem is that abortion is not a crime. There are several reasons why one aborts a pregnancy. Now, this poem is actually trying to convey her motherly emotions and her grief that made her to do so. Here, the speaker does not reveal us why she did abortion, and therefore, no one can judge her actions. So, take this poem as a reflection of her sentiments and her love towards her unborn children. I hope you understood this poem well. Thank you.